which was the sit-in to protest the military coup. I took part in the Rabaa protest sit-in, and I was there. I witnessed the two smaller massacres that led to the dispersal. And
maybe before that, who were the people at Rabaa? What is it? All political people, all religious people, all men?
So it was I think it was mainly Islamists and supporters of Dr. Morsi that came to the Rabaa Square, and sympathizers and supporters. And no, I think the gender, there's men and women and children. I think people left their homes, which was fascinating to me. People left their homes in Egypt's hot summers, and they came out to the street to defend their voices. And then that was pretty fascinating to me. People were fasting 16-hour fast days in Egypt in that summer. And people were in the streets, and they would go out and march and come back and take breaks and nap and go back out and march for their own voice, to say that our voice mattered and it should continue to matter. So, yeah, that's Rabaa.
Well, Rabaa is certainly a focal point of the tragedy of the human rights violations by the existing regime now, the Sisi coup and his regime. Maybe we can spend some time describing what happened.
So before getting there, it was the most tragic, but that's not to forget about the previous massacres that happened from 2011 leading on to that, where cops were murdered in cold blood in Maspero, where you had the people, the young revolutionary youth who did not want to get in bed with the military, who said يسقط حكم العسكر very early on, who were killed in Ahdas Majlis al-Wazara, who were killed in Muhammad Mahmoud. All of those smaller massacres that happened are very much were just a preview of what was to come. And we saw that, and there was previews in Rabaa, in the Republic Guard. There was another preview in Ahdas al-Manasla. And then there was the massacre. I think, so I have a little bit of a hard time. I'm very honest, and I am very comfortable with my experience, all except Rabaa dispersal. So I have a hard time talking about it. I haven't completely dealt with it, but it's easily the worst day of my life. It was. So I remember I was tweeting from stage, taking pictures. Service was in and out. I remember I was taking pictures, and I would save them, and I would write my commentary, obviously in English, and I would save his drafts, and then whenever service came back on, I would just tweet. So I remember I was doing that, and I was on stage, and I remember the two Al Jazeera cameramen getting shot right in the head, right in front of me. I remember holding one of the bicycle helmets that one of them had put on, thinking that it was going to protect him from bullets. And I remember taking a picture, and I'm not a great photographer. I remember taking a picture, and there was the banner on the back, a white banner that had the anti-coup logo, and it said Silmiya, which was the chant that was in most of these protests: peacefulness, peaceful resistance. And there was this helmet that just came off of this dead cameraman's head, and remains of his brain were in there. As the bullet penetrated the helmet, his head, and came out the other side. With the background, with blood splatter on that white banner, it was just. I remember taking these pictures and tweeting them, and then I remember as I was tweeting, when service came back on, I got a call, and I think it was CNN or something, and So I put them on speaker so that I'm able to, and I had it on the charger because we all know the iPhone 5 battery sucks. So I remember I had it on the charger and I put it on speaker, and they were asking me questions and I was tweeting as I was talking to them. So then they asked me who was on stage, and I told them, I read them, I told them who was on stage with me. So they said, we want to talk to somebody else, one of the leaders. They want to talk to Dr. Pitagi. So I remember looking at the phone, and I took it off speaker and I put it on my head and I leaned over to take the charger off, and a bullet misses my head by inches, not even millimeters. Wallahi, I felt the wind of it. So I'm scared as heck. I'm like, what's going on? And then I get another bullet right in my left arm. So I was targeted. Anybody, and I wasn't the only one, obviously. There was thousands. Human Rights Watch calls this the bloodiest day in Egypt's modern history. Anybody with a camera was targeted. Anybody that wanted to show the world what was happening, that the military was killing its own people in cold blood, was targeted. The rest of the day was a blur, honestly. I remember walking around like a zombie, honestly. It's the worst feeling. Anyone that's ever been in a war zone will tell you that you're running from death to death. Honestly, I remember after I got stitched up with the bullet still on my arm, I remember just sitting there and just, literally it had been 7 straight hours of non-stop shooting with no safe exits. And I remember just sitting there and then literally I laid on the ground, and wallahi, I remember thinking, wow, I wish that bullet would have just ended it, and just, I didn't know where to go. People around me, just imagine the smell of tear gas and blood and bullets all in one, and you're inhaling this, and you're tasting this death. And you're running, but you're still alive, and 10 hours later, we're given a safe exit where we're made to walk in rows with gunshots, 2 rows of officers lined up and shooting over our head. So that we can go down with our heads down, so that it's another show of power, another show that, the rule of the jungle, survival of the fittest, those that have the guns, that have the weapons, shall prevail. So yeah.
How many people were killed and wounded?
Well, that's a question I think we'd all like. Human Rights Watch estimated over 1,000. I couldn't tell you. I remember so many bodies, so many people, so many familiar faces, so many people that I had seen in the square. There were people that were burnt afterwards. Sorry, I'm going to rewind a little bit, which is a very important point I want to bring up. As we were leaving, as in the safe exit for Rabaa, and literally gunshots being shot over our heads so that we can get out with our heads down, I remember an older man right in front of me said, Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. In God we seek refuge, and He is our protector. I remember one of the officers on the right just stopped shooting and ran up to this old man. Wallahi, he stuck a gun to his head. And he said, what we're doing is for the sake of God, you hypocrites. So it's also very important to understand how religion is used to manipulate these soldiers and to motivate them to literally murder in cold blood their own people, which is honestly, it's for me, after having gone what I've gone through, I honestly, alhamdulillah, and having in retrospect, or in hindsight, hindsight's 20/20, but and looking back, I had an outlet, which was the hunger strike, to let out my negative energy. So I have it in my heart, and maybe not a lot of others, but I have it in my heart to maybe forgive even some of these soldiers that, you know, were involved in any of these things. But Allah, I don't have it in my heart to forgive these preachers and these religious figures that, you know, have brainwashed these soldiers, these poor, you know, uneducated soldiers and officers to kill thousands of people. I don't have it, and I don't have it for them or for their superiors. And from a religion to be used to manipulate people and to use it as motive, it's disgusting in every sense of the word.
And for the record, actually, Human Rights Watch described it, or Amnesty, I think, described it as the worst shooting and murder of peaceful protesters, not just in Egypt, in recent history.
The Human Rights Watch, their recent was,
I mean, there were, in Rabaa, there were a lot of international media outlets, from CNN to BBC, Al Jazeera, and all of them reported the same thing. Peaceful protesters, camping, men, women, and children, eventually shot, killed by security forces and soldiers. Yet the regime, the Egyptian government, of the coup, continues to claim that it only used violence and force because people there were armed and they were shooting at the police, despite the fact that, without exception, every media outlet that was there, every independent media outlet actually spoke exactly the opposite, rejected that claim. Did you see any shooting, any?
No, there is 100% a peaceful protest. I was in Tahrir and in Rabaa, and it was a lot more peaceful than Tahrir was. So, that's my answer. I mean, the New York Times has literally an 11-hour, shoot or whatever inside Rabaa Square, where they went to every corner unattended, So I don't think, honestly, I think only the Egyptian government still is, living in their own delusion about Rabaa being an armed protest. But I think it's been established that it was a peaceful sit-in. There was delegations from the UK Parliament and the African Union and others who came through and were, again, unattended. They could walk, go anywhere they'd like, and I don't think their respective governments would have even allowed them to enter an armed protest or sit-in. So.
Well, what happened? You were left or allowed to leave, escorted. How did you get arrested?
So I was staying at home, getting at my father's house in Maadi. And
was your father arrested at that time?
No, he was not. My father disappeared. And I didn't know. I was at home. I didn't know that many people. I had gotten shot and I had gotten surgery, and I had 2 metal nails in my arm that needed the dressing, needed to be changed and stuff. So some of my friends that I had gotten to know in Rabaa, journalists and others, would come by and they would help change the dressing on my arm. On 11 days after the dispersal, they came looking for my father at the house and they didn't find him, so they grabbed me. Me and 3 friends, all journalists. They're still languishing in prison now, even after I've come out. So, yeah.
Can you tell us what happened after that? Because, how many prisoners are currently in Egypt? How many of them have faced charges? How long do they wait before they face charges, and what type of charges are we talking about?
So I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get into the legality. Honestly, there's an illusion of a legal system. There isn't a legal system in Egypt. There isn't a system in Egypt. There's some chaos of some sort that somehow manages to function. And, which was the hardest part, because when I got arrested, even when they came in, I literally, I opened the door like I would for a cop here, and, where's your warrant kind of thing, and I was shoved, beaten, and, taken. The process of getting arrested in Egypt, I think, is one of the most disgusting and inhumane processes that I've ever seen in my life or I've ever heard about or read about. When we were first arrested, we disappeared for 2 days. So the officers, when we asked them if we can get a phone call, if we can let people know where we're at or anything, they told us, you want drugs? Fine. You want prostitutes? Fine. You want food? Fine. You want a phone call? That's never going to happen. So, and this really, I mean, we only disappeared for 2 days, which wasn't a big thing now, but now there are hundreds of Egyptians, men and women, that people have no clue where their family members have no idea where they're at. They just completely disappear. And that in itself is a scary thought because literally during that time the Egyptian government can do anything. You no longer exist. And they make sure they assign you a number. So you can't even be called by your name, you're a number. We did that during my imprisonment period, I was moved from 3 different police stations, 3 different prisons, and one of the prisons, so there's an initiation or a hazing, or whatever you want to call it, a welcoming party, as they call it, where in every prison, one of the worst ones, so I was shot, so my arm was in a sling, I had my prescription drugs were in there, my painkillers, and then I was handcuffed to a criminal. And that we were 4 political prisoners and 50 or 47 other criminals that were in one transport car. I was handcuffed to this criminal and we were shoved out of the car into the entrance of this prison, and there were 2 rows of guards with batons, whips, belts, and we had to basically run through this maze of this human, made maze where it led to this big hall, and we were beaten, and then once you get in this hall, you're made to strip to your underwear, and you're made to face a wall. And then your head gets bashed. You have to face the wall, and you're handcuffed to somebody. I had the added benefit of having my other arm in a sling, so I literally could not even put my arm here to protect myself. And your head gets bashed against the wall. You're kicked. You're made to get on your knees. And then one of the officers gave his own little recommendation to the transport officer, to the welcome prison officer. Told him these are political prisoners that killed our brothers and our colleagues in Rabat. So they took me out of my handcuffs and my three of my other friends, and they beat us for 2 straight hours. They beat me on my broken arm and targeted it. And at that moment, I thought that was the most excruciating pain that I will ever feel, physical pain. Later, so I had 2 nails on my arm. One nail moved down and one nail moved up. The nail that moved down, its tip was touching the funny bone. So I was getting, literally every time I touched anything, or when I was sleeping and I just moved and I hit anything, I would get electrocuted. And the other nail, literally any time I moved my shoulder, it would rip through my deltoid muscle. And then literally it would just go down and up, for 3 months after of the US Embassy pushing, for me to just get an x-ray on my arm to see what had happened to it, nothing. SubhanAllah, thankfully my arm is still functioning. But I thought it was the most excruciating pain that I will ever feel until 3 months later, where an inmate doctor had to operate on me with a pair of pliers and a razor. with no anesthesia,